Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology, now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Karnoffs, and this is the February Room.
The North Woods of Wisconsin holds a special place in my heart. It's where my grandmother raised her family. It's also a place where I spent my entire childhood summers at the family cabin on a small lake, where I learned to fish. So this past summer, on my first guided trip, Justin and I made our way to the musky capital of the world, Hayward, Wisconsin, to fish with Hayward Fly Fishing Company. Welcome to the February Room, Stu Neville, the owner of this legendary fly shop, and actually new owner, right?
New owner indeed. Thank you for having me, Lauren. It's nice to be on the podcast. I've enjoyed some episodes, and this will be fun. Looking forward to talking with you.
Well, like I said, Wisconsin, I can talk about Wisconsin all the time. Like, people will be like, oh, are you born and raised in Wisconsin? I'm like, no, Colorado Springs, but I have this family cabin in Wisconsin. And what I always have to laugh is when you head to from Spooner to Hayward, you'd always have to cross this bridge. And you go under, and it said, Spooner sucks. And then when you head back, it was like, Hayward blows. But then this year, when I was going up there to go fishing with Ben, one of your employees, who's amazing, I didn't see. I think I saw Hayward blows, but Spooner doesn't suck anymore. I didn't see Spooner sucks.
I'll give you the update on that, and I'll offer one correction if I may, because
yes, please do. Please correct me.
It always goes, Spooner blows, Hayward sucks.
Ah, dang it!
Not the other way around. And as you're driving south on 63 towards Spooner, you read on the train bridge, Spooner blows, and then you're headed back toward Hayward. Hayward sucks.
I mean, I feel like blows is a bigger blow to the ego than sucks.
I would agree. And, I didn't go to high school in Hayward, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of how or when this happens. But every graduating class of the two high schools goes out and spray paints this train bridge that's about halfway between the two towns. And then whatever authority, if it's the county or the railroad or whoever, highway department, I don't know, they have to come out and, repaint it and whatever, paint it black again. Can't have it, can't have that graffiti out there. All those sensitive minds and young eyes seeing.
You can't scare the tourist.
Well, right. Although I think half the tourists or more, not unlike yourself, think of that as part of the charm. I don't know.
I find it so charming. I always giggle because we would, the summertime, part of our things to do is go to the Freshwater Museum in Hayward because, you gotta make the rounds even though you've done it every year. And so anyways, Hayward and Spooner, even though there's obviously a rivalry, it's the community up there is amazing. Like, everyone likes to, Missoula seems to be kind of like, oh, no more people. And maybe Hayward and Spooner kind of wanted, but you guys are always inviting to like tourism. Like, oh,
Super
come here, come on and have a seat right over here, Jerry. Come on, get over here, Jerry. You want a beer?
Yeah, there's plenty of that. And I think like any tourist-based town, where the economy is largely made up of tourism, you get people in both camps who are kind of pro and anti-tourist, and some people just want to be left alone, and others are maybe over welcoming, and the town feels a little bit overrun sometimes. But I don't know, for the most part, you got really good folks up here, and it's an amazing area. Just to circle back to one more update on the bridge.
Yes.
So this year's Hayward class went out and spray painted the classic spooner blows on the railroad bridge, and that was all good. You know, they did a great job.
Yeah, took their time.
Yeah, really nailed it. And I'm sure there were a lot of high fives all around. And then on the other side of the bridge, where ordinarily it would say Hayward sucks, well, there's an even smaller town, a tiny little town north of Hayward called Drummond. And I don't know anybody who has any strong feelings about Drummond one way or another, positive or negative. Apparently, the youth of Spooner this year decided they were going to come after Drummond. And so now on that side of the bridge, for no apparent reason, it says, Drummond sucks ass. And I got to think that, like, the good people and children of Drummond are seeing that and they're like, what the hell did we do? Like, what is going on here?
But we need to say something about Hayward, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
There needs to be another sign. You can't mess up with tradition. Come on, kids.
I agree, but at the same time, it gave me a great laugh just picturing, you know, all the people of Drummond seeing that and either being psyched up that they're finally getting some recognition or like totally confused, you know, what did we do wrong to deserve this? And
also the fact that they didn't just they had to add the ass to it, which makes it even more classic. Yeah. They're like, we're going to say sucks. It's going to be sucks ass.
Yeah, I think maybe they felt outdone by the Spooner blows for so many years, being more insulting. They had to really juice it.
That's what I love about small towns. They really keep up with like some fun traditions. And in my high school, it was like too big. No one was going to write anything bad because no one would care. The city's too big. So when you have a small town like that, that's what I love. And I mean, Hayward is so beautiful and special because I think everyone thinks about Wisconsin, you know, the Great Lake, you know, the thousands of lakes. But what makes Hayward really special is we have the Namakagon River. And I would love to hear a fishing story from you, Stu, about your home waters.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, the Namakagon, you're right, is really special. And I know you can talk to any fly fisherman, shop owner, guide, whatever, about their home water, and I can just about guarantee you the word special is going to make it into their description of it, which I think is amazing. It's great that people can feel such strong attachment to a resource like that, no matter which resource it is. But the Namakagon is a part of the National Scenic Riverway system. It's part of the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, and so there's very little development on it. The river is 100 miles long, and it's really unique in that it's got a number of very different and exceptional fisheries. The northern third is a great trout fishery. The middle third is, you know, becomes warm water. It's really good smallmouth and pike fishing, and then all the way down, sort of the lower third of the river is great smallmouth and pike and walleye and muskie and all kinds of stuff going on down there. So you've got this trout fishery, this bass fishery, and then this musky fishery all in the same river, with very little development anywhere. It's really a cool river. Well,
and when I went with Ben, which Ben is just the most amazing guide. The most amazing guide I've ever had. He's the best one I've ever had. He's the only guide I've ever had. Wow. I know. Isn't that crazy? I have Justin. Like, why would I pay someone to go fishing when I just make Justin take me everywhere. And so it was such a special.
Get him on the oars.
It was such a special treat. I loved Ben's enthusiasm. The first time we were going down the river, and it was really quiet. Actually, at the very beginning, I was like, "Gosh, maybe we're not that good, Justin, at smallmouth fishing." And there was this one time where Justin set the hook, and Justin lost it, but the smallmouth came out, like, out of the water, grabbed it, like it was just a huge splash. I mean, the Namakagon was so quiet, but then there was this whole chaos happening right in front of us, and and Justin lost it. But Ben got up and was like, "Whoa, yeah!" And I was like, oh, "Yay!" He just lost a fish, and Ben's enthusiasm and also his knowledge. I think he's isn't he going into like biology or something of the
He, yeah, I could talk. We could do a whole episode about Ben Cooper. He's really an amazing person and a good friend.
yeah.
Ben is currently in a PhD program for plant biology.
Yes.
He got his master's several years ago, and now he just re-entered the world of academia. So he's a biologist, but also just one of the more joyful, enthusiastic, but also kind of thoughtful and introspective
Yes.
people that you could care to spend time in a boat with. He's really he is a he's a good dude and a good guide.
And the other experience that I had as a guy with being with a guide is that he did everything for me. I was like, okay, I guess I got to change a fly. He's like, give it to me, and I was like, you are gonna do you want me to do it? Like, no, 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 no. Like, and he's like, no, no, I got this. So it was such an amazing experience. Like, there is, when I was thinking like, oh, do we go with a guide? And I was like, no, let's just do it. Like, how crazy is it? The first time I go fishing with a guide is in Hayward, Wisconsin, where I just love it, that area just means so much to me. And
Mhm.
when you do have a guide, it takes a whole load off your shoulders in terms of like someone's there putting the fly on, someone's telling you where to cast. And obviously Ben knows those waters so well. He was able to give us some really good directions in the beginning. I think Justin and I were like stripping. And he's like, you guys have got to slow down. And I was, and in the nicest way, he didn't say it like that. In my mind, I'm like, come on, Lauren, slow down. But it's interesting how smallmouth, you don't have to be fast about it. And that's what I love about the Namakagon is that everything's really quiet, and the way that you need to present for smallmouth isn't loud. It's like you got to be patient and just sit there and make sure you're stripping slowly and making those popping noises with your poppers. And and smallmouth, it's now my new obsessed fish. I love smallmouth fishing.
Yeah, so I've enjoyed listening to some episodes of the podcast already, and I've enjoyed listening to some stories that people have told, but there have been some episodes where you've sort of like, thrown in a little anecdote or story about your time fishing with us in Hayward, and hearing the energy in your voice really has brought a smile to my face. It's
Love
cool.
it.
It's flattering to know that we do a good thing here, and that you really enjoyed yourself. But you said a lot about smallmouth and just how joyful they are. They're such a fun fish, and I think people assume a lot about these fish that just because they're a warm water predator. It's like, well, you can take whatever and slap it down and rip it through the water, and they just want to eat big stuff that's moving fast and making a ton of noise. And there are days where that's true for sure. But that then that same person who loves to go out and throw huge streamer and rip it through the water, they'll go out and they'll have a skunk day or a really bad day, and they get off the water and, oh, it just wasn't happening out there today, they weren't biting. Well, no, they were. You just didn't show them the right food the way they wanted it. They do have some nuance to their game a little bit like that. I just don't think people give them that credit.
Well, and also they fight so hard. I didn't even think, because I mean I've caught some largemouth bass on the lake up there, and I mean they fight, but the smallmouth, that shook me. I like the first time I caught one, I was like, wait, what the heck did I catch a tarpon, Justin? I think there's a tarpon on this. Like, this is not a smallmouth. And
Yeah.
he's like, and I've never had to fight a fish like that. Like with trout, I always kind of strip. And that one, I was just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I was like walking to the front of the boat, like passing Ben. I was like, move over, Ben. I'm going to come back here. He's like, where are you going? I was like, well, I'm just trying to bring this fish to the boat. I don't know what the heck. It's like fighting so hard. And
Yeah.
that's what surprises me with smallmouth, is that they are crazy fighting fish. Like, do you remember your first time catching a smallmouth?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're brawlers. I think a lot of people, like, a lot of people will tell your same story that you just did. That first of all, I want to make it clear that largemouth and smallmouth, when it comes to fighting on the rod, are in totally different classes. Totally different classes. Smallmouth have several levels above, several different gears above what a largemouth will give you. I think largemouth are really cool, and I love those fish. But if you're looking for like a bend your 8-weight to the cork type fish,
Yes.
smallmouth. I guess to my smallmouth origins, I was fortunate to grow up fishing a lake around Hayward. I did not grow up in Hayward, but my family, not unlike yours, has been visiting Hayward since I was born. When I was born, my family got a spot just east of town, and it's on a fantastic smallmouth lake. So I didn't start out fly fishing. I was a spin fisherman from the time I could hold a rod, but started fly fishing, kind of middle of high school. Kind of started working it into my fishing program. And oh my gosh, the first time I hooked a smallmouth on a fly rod in Round Lake, it just totally blew my mind, because it's, I was so used to throwing a crankbait or a spinnerbait or whatever and just ripping it through the water, and I caught this fish on like a size 12 parachute Adams, just farting around trying to catch a fish. And there just so happened to be this flying ant hatch that had gone on the day before. And so there were these flying ants just sitting, wriggling around on the surface, and it was glassy calm. And Round Lake is crystal clear. And I watched this huge fish come up and sip, these flying ants, these golden flying ants that were sitting on the surface. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go. And it came up and ate my fly. Just to watch all that, you watch this fish swim up from down, 8-10 feet or whatever, and come up and just kiss this fly off the surface, when you're so used to watching them eat, a wacky worm or a or whatever. And this fish, this idea of the fish that you have in your mind, just totally changes at that moment. A lot of people ask me what my favorite fish is, and we guide smallmouth and musky, and depending on the day, my answer might change. But if you really twist my arm, I would have to say smallmouth. They're just so cool.
Definitely one of my all-time favorite fish. But Hayward is also known as the musky capital of the world.
I think they have 5 world musky fit records, right? Is that correct?
It's something like that. And the lore goes all the way back to, the 40s, when people were catching these just obscene monsters out of some of these lake and river systems. And we could launch into what created the conditions for those fish to exist. But
do you think they still exist?
Are there fish north of 60 inches out there in Hayward? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Part of fishing, and especially musky fishing, is the belief that something could happen. So, because for so long you're out there and nothing is happening. So I like to, in the spirit of musky fishing, believe that yes, there is a fish that tops out over 60 inches in the Hayward area. You see people catching, fish in the mid-high 50s in some of these like huge lake systems. The Bay of Green Bay has some giant fish in it. There's some big lakes in, central and northern Minnesota that have some true giants in them. And Hayward certainly had its day where it's produced fish like that too. And, there are mid-50s fish that come out of the Hayward area every year. 60 inches, I believe it. I would love to see it. I don't know if that fish gets caught, the way people are using electronics now and all these different
Yeah.
fish finding technologies. I think if it's out there, someone's going to find it. There's a lot of pressure on the water out here, but gosh, I hope that when they do catch it, they treat it right and release it. It'd be a shame to see a fish like that go just in the name of records and glory.
Well, and kind of like back to your point, like back in the day, it was very normal in the 50s to take your fish and then, pull it out of the water and get it taxidermy, which my grandfather has in my uncle's garage in Wisconsin, has like my grandfather's walleye. Back in the 50s, it's like his first walleye, and it's the grossest taxidermy, but we have to keep it. It's grandpa's fish, and it's like the eyeballs are like dried up, and the fins, like I don't know what kind of plaster they use, but it basically looks like a decomposed fish on the wall. But it's from the 1940s. And I always wonder if that had some kind of bad repercussions when people kept pulling the greatest big fish out, because that's just what you did back then. You just were like, oh, I'm going to take this home and take a picture.
And for muskies in Hayward, I mean, you kind of mentioned the process. Well, you catch it and you pull it out of the water and you take it, taxidermy or whatever. This was all like back in the 40s when a lot of these records were being caught. Well, there was no digital camera, so you weren't going to like whip out your phone and snap a quick one and get the fish back in the water or whatever. So the two sort of notorious characters in the muskie record chase back in that day were Louis Spray and Cal Johnson. Cal Johnson's record holds. Louis Spray's fish, by a lot of accounts, was clearly bigger, but his fish did not count in the record because he landed it by shooting it in the head. And yes. Yep. That's how a lot of people were landing fish back in the day. They'd pull them up alongside the boat or up on shore, whatever, and they'd pull out a pistol and shoot that thing to pacify it, I guess. And then you would take that fish and bring it into the bar that night. And, if you don't bring your fish in, you don't have a picture of it. It's, you come to the bar and, oh, how'd you do out there today? Oh, we caught 5 and biggest one was 58. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Show me. Well, if you shot that fish and you brought it to the bar, you can show that guy what you caught that day. And
is that why Friday fish fry is a thing? Because it started back in the 40s. Because all the guys just went out, took pistols, and were like, Friday fish fry.
God bless a Friday fish fry. I love it, but I couldn't speak to its origins. But there were, up until relatively recently, there were a lot of muskies dying in the name of just going up on somebody's wall or, proof of somebody's fishing prowess. So I think the digital camera has saved a lot of fish lives in recent years.
Pros and cons to the future. I mean, I think we sometimes think about the good old days, but I think there was a lot of things that happened during the good old days that didn't probably transcend really well to like the fisheries that is going on the Namakagon. I know we were talking about muskies. I remember Ben was, when we were out, because I've never actually caught a muskie on the fly. And I remember Ben was giving us some information about like the skills and the time and the weather and the flies and how it's just really, even if you get a chance, like bringing one to the boat is very rare. Can you talk about your strategy when it comes to fly fishing for muskie on the Namakagon?
Yeah. Well, I should say, for starters, we do fish the Namakagon, but we fish a handful of other rivers in the area too. We have a lot of options. We're fortunate to have a lot of really good water around here.
But Namakagon's the best one to say because it's like I love the name Namakagon.
It's got a hell of a name.
It's the best name, Namakagon.
Yeah. And I I feel like all the river systems that we fish up here have cool names, sort of in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, we've got like Clark.
Yeah.
It's like you couldn't come up with a name like Nemacoggin.
Well, so many of our river systems up here are named they're either given native Ojibwa names, or they're given like French sort of voyageur fur trapper type names.
Yeah.
The Namakoggin and the Chippewa are given native names, and then you have the St. Croix and the Flambeau with a little more French spin on them. But at any rate, they're all pretty fun to say and even more fun to fish. They're really, really cool rivers. But anyway, you had asked about musky fishing and kind of some tactics and approach.
Yeah. For my next trip.
Oh my gosh. Muskies are one of the ultimate head shaking fish, and I don't mean that as in like you hook them and they shake their head. They do, but like
you shake your head.
You can just hold your head in your hands and shake your head about the things that you see them do, their behaviors, the things you see them commit to or not commit to, the places they choose to live. They can be extremely difficult fish to pattern, and that can drive you crazy as a guide or an angler, frankly, because there are a lot of people out there in the world who are not guides, who are still dedicating major hours out of their life to chase these crazy things.
And isn't like the peak time to do it is like in the fall, pretty much?
Yeah. There are a lot of different schools of thought about that. I'll say the way we approach it, we fish muskie based largely on water temperature. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that, muskie are considered a warm water fish. Like you group them into that category. Trout being cold water fish and bass being warm water fish. Muskie get thrown into that warm water category, but they are a fish that really needs a lot of dissolved oxygen in the water, for as big and strong and scary and tough as they are. They're a very high performance critter. They demand a lot of dissolved oxygen in the water. And as trout anglers know, you have to be sensitive to water temperature that way, because as it gets hotter, you lose a lot of that dissolved oxygen. So all that to say, we don't fish muskie when the water gets above 75 degrees. There's no official decree from the DNR in Wisconsin or any like official body about, when it gets to a certain temperature, you got to stop fishing them. There's no hoot owl really for muskie. And I wish that there was. I think a lot of fish would be saved. And frankly, there are so many warm water opportunities up here for anglers that you don't have to fish muskies when the water is 82 degrees or whatever. But anyway, that self-imposed limitation rules out a lot of the summertime for us chasing muskies. So we focus a lot of our time early in the summer, and then kind of right around like that second week of September through the fall, as cold as you can stand it. Those are kind of our prime muskie seasons where we really dedicate a lot of our energy to chasing them. And you get the occasional cold snap in the summer, and when that happens, the fish can switch on, and you can get after them then for sure and have a lot of success. But we do really well early in the summer before the water gets too hot, and then in the fall when they're trying to put the feed bag on to load up for winter, and all of a sudden your fly starts to look pretty good to them.
I know a lot of guides this past summer, because our water temperatures this past summer were extremely warm. And there was a lot of guides who just decided to cancel all of their bookings just because they're like, there's no way any of these fish are going to be able to survive being caught and then being put into the temperature at one point was like 70 degrees at 10 a.m. And there was no hoot owl restrictions. Like everyone could still go fishing, but a lot of guides, and a lot of other anglers, independent anglers, decided not to go fishing. And I think that's what's really great about the community is sometimes is that you realize what great resource you have and how you want to protect that resource for, you can wait 3 months, you can wait 2 months, for the fall. And I think that's just so important, because if we start taking advantage of the things that we love, they'll be taken away for future generations, which is why the Hayward Fly Shop it's been around for a long time, hasn't it? How many years?
Yeah, the shop opened its doors in '05.
Yeah. And you just bought it a year ago?
Yeah, well, not even. So I guided for the shop for 8 seasons, and then I just bought the business this past spring. So what would have been April 2021. Yeah, it's
How does that feel? Like switching from guide to owner?
you never really know how it's going to go. Something like this, a big move like this, you don't know how it's going to affect you and your life. You can take some pretty educated guesses, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to take to it, but I love it. I went from, my guide days essentially got cut in half from previous years to then this past season. But I guided enough to sort of keep my sanity and stay in touch with what's happening on the water. And fortunately, I've got other great guides in the shop who are out every day and giving me good intel as to what's happening out there and what they're seeing. But I actually have found that shop life suits me fairly well. I need to get on the water. But I do find joy in helping people who come into the shop, especially in a town like Hayward, where not everybody. You get all kinds, right? You get people who've been fly fishing for longer than I've been alive, and I don't pretend to be the ultimate source of knowledge. I'm still in here trying to learn every day from people like that who walk into the shop. But then also, beginners who just are, saw a buddy do it or have read about it or heard about it. And, oh, you guys got fly fishing around here, huh? And well, you gotta give that person the time of day. It's, I'm happy to talk with them about all the cool opportunities in the fly fishing world, especially, locally as it relates to this shop. I just think fly shops need to be that resource. And if for every beginner that walks in, the person behind the counter in the shop rolls their eyes, well, that's just not, I feel like fly fishing kind of has that reputation a little bit too. Like it can seem inaccessible to some people, and that's a problem. That's not good. I mean, we don't necessarily need everybody out there, because we all know how that works, especially you guys out west have seen some kind of crazy increase in traffic on the rivers in the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic. But frankly, I just think as a sport, there should be some sense of welcome if you do have genuine interest in this thing, and that starts with fly shops and guides, frankly. So,
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's when I experienced coming into the Hayward Fly Shop, because it's like my first guided trip. And I think you are right that there's just some fly shops that tend to be, I've walked into a few and I'm always like, like this is so nerve wracking. Like they're probably wondering why I'm doing here. And I just need some 3X, some tippet.
Well, and if we really want to get into an issue, you walking into a fly shop as a woman, you even get a different sort of eye cast at you, which is that's a serious problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's been handfuls of time that that people have asked me if I know what I'm doing, and that because I'm like, oh, I need some, get my inventory up. I needed 3X, and then I think I bought a nymph or something because I was like, oh, I'm gonna go fishing, so I might as well grab a couple of nymphs if I really want to catch something. And I've had a couple of times where people question me if I know what I'm doing with this. And I'm like, well, I'm not buying them together. Like I feel I have to explain why I have two different items, as opposed to, I feel sometimes if Justin went in, he would never be questioned buying two things that don't work together,
Right.
So it's always like, and maybe it's more me being like, why are you saying that to me? Like, but you
Yeah.
know,
Well, I think, if Justin goes into a shop and buys two completely unrelated things, as a man, he's probably got a plan. But if a
yeah,
woman walks into a shop and buys two unrelated things, she doesn't know what she's doing.
yes.
So I don't know. I struggle with that. I think, it goes back to fly fishing being a welcoming environment. We all need to work on that.
Well, and I just think in general, I think when going to Hayward Fly Shop, everyone, like, I was just like, who's going to be our guide? Because everyone, like, when we walked into the shop and everyone was smiling, Ben was there. Was it Brian? I can't remember the guy that was behind the desk.
Oh, Brandon.
Brandon. See, I was close.
Yeah.
Brandon.
Yeah.
He was smiling, and the shop is so beautiful. It's like wood, and then we like go outside. I'm like, oh, what boat are we going to be on? And you guys had all those beautiful boulder boats. And that was even really nice because also sometimes when you go on a guided trip, I mean, we have a lot of people up here in Montana, and I'll be like driving. I'm like, oh gosh, that guy's going to take that person on that boat. I was like, I got luxury up here. I got this nice boulder boat, and they're so comfortable, and everyone was smiling. And it is nerve-wracking when you first go fishing with someone because I'm so used to Justin just watching me fish. And if he corrects me, I'm like, who cares? I was like, here's going to be this stranger that's going to be right behind me. Because, of course, I'm on the boat. I'm, of course.
Yeah,
and
you're up on the bow.
I'm going to be I'm going to catch all the fish.
Yep.
But it was very warming and never judgy. Like, I missed a couple of didn't get my line tight enough. And, but I never felt, Ben made me feel right at home. As much as equal as Justin, which I'm not at all, but it just was a very comfortable, it was just a really wonderful day on the river. It's like one of my most memorable memories I will always have. And I get to share it on the podcast all the time. Everyone's like, oh, I'm like, so I went on a guided trip. I'm like, oh, you're a guide? Well, let me tell you about my trip.
Well, a basic belief of mine is if someone is going to pay you to take them out on a guided trip, you should control what you can control because so much of fishing is out of your control. You can make adjustments when you're on the water and things like that. But if you can show up with a clean boat and usable gear and a halfway decent attitude as a guide, you got to do that. And that's something that all the guys here strive for. We try to keep it positive and make it fun for people, regardless of what the fishing day is going to hold for us.
Well, and you guys hit all the marks on that.
Another memory that pops to mind.
As we were on the Namakogan, I came up with a really good idea because we kept seeing, is it the red horse? Red horse, this like those.
Yeah, there are 5 different subspecies of red horse sucker in the Namakogan. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And they're huge. Like I remember I was asking Ben, I was like, Ben, can we catch one of these? And he goes, we've tried, like I was like, have you ever caught one of these red horses? And I came up with the most brilliant fly. If someone can come up with a fly, I came up with the name of the fly. It'd be called Ride 'em Cowboy. Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome? I think you need to come up with a fly because Ben was saying that you guys were trying to figure out a fly that could possibly catch one of those suckers because they're huge. You're just like down there. You're like, I want to catch one of those things. I want to catch one of those suckers.
You can catch them on a fly.
You can? Have you done it?
Yeah, technically, yeah. The best way to catch a red horse sucker is with a gob of worms, and just get it on a heavy weight and get it down there, and eventually they're going to find it. But as far as catching them on a fly rod is concerned, you can
snag one. Like maybe if you just.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about like a legal catch.
Yeah.
So it's actually funny. In the fall, we'll be stripping big musky streamers for musky, and we will occasionally catch a red horse in the mouth. In their weird little sucker mouth, with, a big 4/0 hook and a, 10-inch fly or whatever. So it's like, you didn't snag that fish. It tried to maybe not eat it, but it made some aggressive move on the fly and got hooked. And hey, you landed a red horse. I've run that by our fisheries biologist in town here, and he says, "Yep, people catch them on Rapalas in the fall too. It doesn't make any sense. They can't figure it out." But so that's one way to do it. But something more reliable on a fly rod, you can plunk something heavy down and kind of drift it right by them on the bottom. One of our other guides, Eric, actually caught a few like that this summer with a particularly heavy cone-headed woolly bugger. And it was interesting. He said they almost reacted more to like the vibration of the weight of the fly on the sand, not the visual of it, not the smell. Just, I mean, he's not spraying his flies with smell them or anything, but he said it seemed like it was sort of the tumbling, percussive action of the fly hitting the bottom that grabbed their attention, and they came over and ate it. So the data collection is ongoing on the red horse fishery of the upper, northern Wisconsin. But yeah, we're poking around and having some fun with them every now and then.
Well, especially if the musky fishing is kind of not happening, you just see all these, as you're kind of going down and you look down, like, why don't we catch one of these little guys? Like,
well, that's me. You're opening my mind here just a little bit into sort of Stu's musky philosophy. If you need to catch musky to enjoy musky fishing, I've got news for you. You might not enjoy musky fishing. It's everybody loves catching fish, but if you're not in it for the hunt and the process, and sort of just the bigger picture, then they just might not be the fish for you, and that's okay. It's musky fishing is hard. There's a lot of fishing out there that's difficult, but musky fishing will really challenge you physically and even more so mentally. If you're a couple hours into your musky trip and you're looking down and all of a sudden those red horse are starting to look pretty tempting, you can't give in that easy, or they're gonna, the muskie are gonna beat you. You gotta commit to it and put the time in. And red horse are cool, but the investment
they're
in
no
time,
musky.
the investment in time spent musky fishing does eventually pay off.
Do you have to like prepare your clients as they come in for musky fishing? Like, hey, we're going to put this straight. Like, we have the opportunity to catch fish or to catch a musky, or do you think they're already kind of well aware of their chances of?
I think muskie have a reputation, right, as being notoriously difficult to catch. And I think most people come into a guide day with us having a sense of that. But there are definitely, as with all, I'm sure any guide out there who hears this can relate to it in some way. There are people who expect it to be truly transactional. I pay the money, I catch the fish. And that's just not how it works. 99% of the people who get in a boat with us understand that. But, so all that to say, most people do have a sense of how challenging it is, and know that we are going to do our best to give you opportunity to find and catch a muskie. People ask us all the time, well, how many fish, how many muskies do you catch in a day? Or, what's an average day? That's a super common question. What's an average day of muskie fishing? And oh my gosh, it's the data points are so far apart. You can go days and not even see one. Fishing it hard, fishing it well, not even see them. Or you can move and land 6 fish in an hour or something. These bite windows open up sometimes where the fish just go crazy. But the answer that I give people when they ask that question about sort of a normal or average day is, we hope to get a couple of chances today. And a chance can look like any number of things. It can be a huge blow up as soon as your fly hits the water that you never connect on. It can be a follow all the way up to the boat. You go into a figure eight boat side and that fish is on it and then just for whatever reason disappears, never to be seen again. It can be a flash under your fly. It can be a fish actually eating it but not connecting. It can look like it can look like a boated fish. It can look like a 50-inch fish in the net. So we try to give people opportunity to succeed, and so much of it after that is up to the fish and up to the angler.
Yeah, it already gives me anxiety right now. I could just see my chance, just right there, that one chance. They're like, don't screw this up. Put the fly exactly there. I can hear Justin yelling at me, like, don't stop, slow down. I'm like,
That'll help.
Oh, I can already feel it. I'm just already like sweating underneath my armpits.
Yeah. Muskies have a strange power that way. They get in people's heads. They have this sort of magical, mythical ability where they just kind of stare into your eyeball, and I've seen a lot of really good anglers turn to mush just at the thought of muskie. It's a funny thing.
They do kind of have a glare at you, don't they? It always, even when you see somebody's picture with a muskie, you're always like, "Ugh, it's looking at you, not very happy."
They are beautiful, but they are not kind-looking critters. They look ill-intended, which I really like.
They're like the opposite of what a rainbow looks like. I mean, a rainbow's like, oh, it's beautiful, and it looks like it's taking a little smile with you in this picture. But yeah, no, muskie, I hope I get the opportunity because as I've heard from everyone, is that it's just a fish of a lifetime. And sometimes you feel like you have to travel to, Florida and do the big tarpon, but sometimes like the coolest species is just right around the corner in your own home waters, which for me is my own home waters. I like to think that Wisconsin's part of my home waters too, because that's where I learned to fish. So I'm like, my special place. I love it up there.
Oh, it's wonderful. And I guess, I do the Florida Keys big tarpon thing regularly enough to feel I can actually speak about it somewhat. There are similarities to be drawn between musky fishing and big tarpon fishing. They are not the same, but there are similarities there. I think muskie have earned their place on sort of the bucket list of fish. They are really cool, and they do some strange things, like just stuff that you don't see a whole lot of other fish do.
What's the strangest thing you've seen that a muskie has done? I've had my own oar blade grabbed by a fish a couple of times. So that would lead you to believe, well, God, how hard can they be to catch if they're eating oar blades, But then, they'll turn right around and, a mile down the river, you'll have a fish come in on your fly and inspect it and follow it and follow it and follow it. You're just stirring the pot in this figure eight by the boat, and then it just disappears. So they can be insanely reckless and aggressive, just eating oar blades with abandon, or they can be really finicky and kind of choosy about what they're going to eat. Which kind of reminds me, you said the eight figure, that's what you have to do when you're fly fishing, right? Like a figure eight. Is that what you have to?
That's not exclusive to fly fishing necessarily. It's musky anglers who do any kind of casting. People can troll for muskies. You can drag suckers for muskies. But if you're casting and retrieving a lure or a fly or whatever all the way back to your feet or to the boat, the figure eight is a commonly understood necessity in musky fishing because they will eat it right at your feet. Sometimes it seems like that's where they want to eat it. If you're fishing a sinking line and you're bringing your fly through and it's 4 or 5 feet down or whatever, and in clear water, in fact, the most recent muskie I caught this year on a guide's day off illustrated this beautifully. We were fishing in crystal clear water, and probably 30 feet out from the boat, I my fly's down 5 feet, and 30 feet out, I can see it. I can see the fly. And I see this fish come up and make a big move on the fly. And this is an elite predator. It could eat it if it wanted to. This is not a challenge for this fish. But I just keep the fly moving, keep it moving, 20 feet from the boat, fish makes another move, doesn't eat it, keep it moving, fly's still down. At my feet, I strip so the fly is maybe 18 to 24 inches away from the tip of the rod. And I just take the rod, shove it down in the water, and start drawing these big shapes and bring the fly up near the surface of the water. And a lot of times that's what does it. They commit right then and there, when they could have committed way out when the fly was down, and in theory, less work.
And you think the muskie would have seen the boat or something, right?
There are times when they definitely do. There are times where or they sneak up on you. Like you're bringing the boat, you're bringing the fly in, and you get near the boat, and all of a sudden this phantom just materializes out of the dark, and I have seen and heard grown men and women do some strange things when that fish just appears like that, whatever noise comes out of the mouth, and they will jump or shake the boat, and the fish will feel that or see that and forget it. They're gone. But there are times where they are so hot and intent on eating that fly. I have had people in a figure eight hit the fish with a rod, and the fish turns around and eats the fly. They are an agent of chaos, and
I love that.
I love it too, but it can totally break you, because sometimes that works in your favor. More often than not, they're going to leave you brokenhearted, and so you've got to sort of be prepared for that and try to appreciate the cool stuff that you're going to see out there, whether or not it results in you landing that fish.
Are you in the Freshwater Museum book of records?
Personally?
Yes. It feels like everybody's in that book. Have you seen those books? There's not even just like one book of like records. There's like 7 books at the Freshwater Museum, which they're golden. Have you opened that booklet anytime in the past?
I've not opened the book. No, I can say confidently that I am not in one of the books. And I guess just my own personal philosophy. I don't fish for records.
Yes.
We really don't even measure fish. We've all seen and measured enough fish in our day to be able to say within an inch, okay, that's a mid 40s fish, or that's a 32 inch fish, whatever. And if it's a 33 1/4 or a 31, what difference does that really make?
Yeah. Does it take away from your experience or your love of fishing?
And it's, it's funny, when it comes to smallmouth, people get tied up on certain numbers, any fish over 18 or 19, or, the hallowed 20-inch fish. And we have all those fish in our waters, but I've seen a 15-inch smallmouth do some really, really cool stuff, and then try to, snatch the rod out of my hand fighting me. It's, it doesn't have to be this, quote unquote trophy to be worth fishing for, or to be the reason to get in the boat at the beginning of the day. There are a lot of big fish out there, and everybody loves big fish, including me. But I think anglers in general place too much importance on numbers.
Agreed. See, that's why I'm the best angler. Like, even if I don't catch fish, I have a good time. But if you do have some time to kill, because you're just there in Hayward, you should go there and look at the book. I've taken so many pictures. Every time I go up there, I'm like, no, I'm gonna take a picture of this guy. And sometimes I'm like, oh, should I share this picture? Because I think probably 80% of those people in those photos are beyond hammered, because they have like whitefish, like the largest whitefish caught in ice fishing. And there'll be a guy that his eyes aren't even like, some of them I think they're jokes, but he's just like hammered. He's like looking down at this frozen whitefish, and he's just
I would love to see it. Love to see it. Did he got the record whitefish? Did he also get the record for like highest ABV?
They
while
should actually.
fishing or something like that? Like, do they give another Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame world record for that? Or
I mean, that museum is amazing. The kids love it. I just, it's a good place to go if the weather starts to get kind of crummy in the summertime, just to kind of like walk around but I mean, they have that huge, isn't it the largest musky statue or whatnot?
it's the giant muskie. It's a very famous piece of sort of iconic Hayward imagery.
Yeah, you have to go upstairs and then you can look at the whole town of Hayward in the mouth of a muskie.
Right. You enter this fish down near the base of its tail and walk all the way up through it. It's like 140 feet long or something like that.
And as you're going, they have like old memorabilia, right?
Yeah.
Of those days of when people used to be shooting fish in the head.
Yep.
Except they don't really showcase that at all in Hayward. They make it seem like the good old days,
Yeah,
Oh.
I gotta think our local chapter of Muskies Inc. Maybe had something to do with a little bit of the removal of the role guns played in landing fish back in the day. Now we like to see fish released. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. And also like keeping them wet, that's a new thing that I'm really trying to just keep fish underwater at all times.
Yeah, yep, and that can be challenging with muskies sometimes, just because of sort of their vicious nature. They can be difficult to work on when you're trying to get the hook out of them. And we use all single barbless hook flies to try to minimize the amount of handling time on those fish. But even so, they are very strong,
Yeah.
and they can make it a challenge to get the hook, just immediately out of them. But yeah, I think that's really important. Kind of back to the point about trying to take care of these fish and some of the steps we take. We really do try to minimize the amount of time that we have our hands on the fish. And if we're going to take a picture, it's going to be real quick, and then that thing is back in the drink.
Yeah, I think a lot of guides are starting to do that too. And I think as the more time I have spent on this podcast and learning more about, gosh, I mean, even marlin, marlin, you should never take, or sailfish, you never should take them out of the water. They have like this coat on them that protects them and their scent and everything. So when you lift them out of the water, it's just, I think as we keep learning about other fisheries and how important it is, I think there is something good about being aware, as opposed to back in the day just being like, well, I'm going to show my buddies at the bar, which there's amazing bars at Hayward.
Where's my 22? We got to land this fish.
Absolutely. Well, before we say goodbye, Stu, would love to hear one more fly fishing story from you.
Sure. Well, I guess one that pops to mind was from my last guide trip of this past season, a November muskie trip with one of my favorite clients, a guy named Steve. He's from New Mexico, and he has roots in Wisconsin, so he heard about us that way, and comes back, and he's been fishing with me for as long as I've been guiding. And it started out, it was just Steve coming, and then he had such a great time and caught fish, and so he started bringing a buddy, and then that turned into 6 buddies, and now it's the Steve group that comes in the fall, which is great. They're wonderful people from all over the place, and we really have a lot of fun with them. But this particular day, it was just me and Steve, which is a beautiful thing. I really like fishing with him, and Steve is one of those guys, and I'm sure guides out there know this type of client. Steve has very little business catching the fish that he does. Steve, and he would, I don't think I'm blasting Steve here. I think he would agree with me. There are more skilled anglers out there than Steve. Now
I like Steve already. He's my kind of man.
Oh yeah, Steve is my kind of man too. Steve is a delight. Steve is not the most skilled angler. That guy finds a way to catch muskies. Like, I like the number of hours fished to inches of muskie landed. He's just, I always know that if Steve gets in the boat, something's going to happen. Like we're going to get him. Steve's in the boat. We're going to catch him.
He's got the mojo.
He's got something out there in the universe. He's lived a good life. He, I couldn't tell you, and I don't know if he could tell you, but maybe that's not important. I don't know. I really enjoy spending time in the boat with him, and he and I have had a lot of success together. So it's just the two of us, and we take off cold November morning. But Steve's in the boat, so there's hope. And sure enough, in the first hour and a half or so of fishing, Steve has moved 2 big fish to the boat. Neither one committed to the fly, but they both came up and seemed ready to eat it boat side and just disappeared. So on this second fish, we backed up and I put the anchor down, and we were gonna, maybe give her another shot after a few minutes. And while we're sitting there resting and chatting and enjoying the morning, and Steve's warming his hands a little bit, another boat rolls up on us around the corner, which is not something that we're very used to seeing in November. But anyway, another boat out there, and these guys are fishing, and they pass us, and I wave them through, and we exchange the pleasantries and whatever. And it's another a guy who owns a shop a little further south in Wisconsin. He and a buddy were just out fishing, and so we chatted for a sec, and they did the gentlemanly thing and put their rods away. They didn't fish the water right off the bow of our boat and just rode through. But they were out in front of us the rest of the day, and I have little issue fishing behind other boats when I'm musky fishing. Caught a lot of fish fishing behind people.
Well, that's interesting.
It is interesting. And we could do a whole
because
whole other
trout fishing,
podcast
you'd be like, screw you.
Well, and even smallmouth fishing to a degree, but
Yeah.
and there's some, it can impact your confidence a little bit, when you get passed by a boat, especially if they're people who know what they're doing and they're going to cover it up. But I've had enough success behind some other boats that it doesn't affect me as much as it used to. But on this particular day, we had moved 2 big fish early, and then as soon as we got behind those guys, we didn't see anything. I mean, it was just dead. And sometimes, well, that's just musky fishing, but also it's like, well, the fish seemed active in the morning, so what's the deal? Are these guys just like bonking all of them on the head as they go down, and catching everything and whatever? So, but it's fishing with Steve, so not a super high pressure situation. He was having a great time, and so was I, and it was just good to be out. But eventually, kind of later in the day, something kind of kicked into my head where I was like, all right, we gotta find Steve some fresh water here. It's just, I made the decision not to fish behind these guys anymore, and I wasn't gonna like jump right in front of them and low hole them or anything, but I knew that just past takeout, the water got a little slower. And I'd been, for that kind of half mile below the takeout, I'd been seeing a lot of fish in there this season. So I thought, all right, these guys are going to take out at this, planned ramp that we're gonna use. Steve and I are going to put the rod away right now, and we're just going to row for a few miles, get to the takeout, and then fish that fresh water down there, and see if we can find one of these fish. And so we beat it. I'm rowing hard, and we go past these guys and, wave and chat a little bit, and we're just zooming. We're on our way. And we get down there, and Steve gets back up in the, standing, and he picks up his rod and he's fishing hard. And at the end, this float that we're doing is really high bank, tight, meandering, forested river for like 10 miles. And then you get to this ramp, and it opens up. It becomes this sort of lowland black ash swamp, really, high grassy bank type thing. It just really, the river changes character in a big way. And it goes from rock to kind of gravel, sand, even a little bit like mud bank. And at that time, it was strange that the day went from this like kind of crisp but sunny day to, as soon as we got down to this spot, the clouds moved in, and the wind was just, snapping and gusting. and kind of swirling around. It was weird. And as a musky guide, that can kind of turn you on a little bit. You're like, okay, there's some weather blowing in here. Like when the weather gets nasty, the fishing gets good. That's not a rule, but like, you know, I've had enough success under those conditions where it's like, all right, Steve, we got the water we want. We got some weird stuff happening here. It's getting kind of spooky out. Like, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And Steve just kind of shrugs. He's on board. All right, let's do it. And so we're fishing it. We get down around these couple of bends, and the wind is whipping the grass around, and all of a sudden we can start to hear this sound on the wind. We can't tell where it's coming from, but it's kind of this like this moaning, kind of whining moan. But it was, strange, but, we're both very focused on this water. We know the fish is going to happen. It's going to happen right here. But as we move downriver, it's getting a little louder and a little louder, and the wind is still kind of pushing the grass around. And when it gets windy, sound kind of bounces. You can have a hard time tracking where a sound is coming from.
Yes.
We
especially like on water.
Yeah. We just had no idea where this sound was coming from. And as we got a little closer, it's getting louder, and we can tell that it's some kind of canine. And so we were thinking like, okay, coyote, or like we have wolves up here, is it some kind of wolf thing? Or and the idea popped into my head, well, this might just be somebody's dog who got it. Is just farting around on the river, but it sounded like there was some distress there. So there's no trapping allowed on the Namakagon, but people do it. Policy and enforcement, two very different things. But anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, now, gosh, someone's dog has gotten its leg caught in a muskrat trap or beaver trap or something. And so I mentioned to Steve, like, we got to be ready to come around the corner here and see something unpleasant. But we're getting closer and closer, and now it sounds like this thing is kind of right on top of us, but we still can't see. And I'm looking in the grass, standing up and looking around, and we come around this little point, and there is a black lab, maybe 12 feet away from me. Big black lab, like a 75-pound dog. As soon as this dog saw us, it stopped its moaning, sort of, it was like this shudder almost. It stopped and just looked right at us, and no tail wagging, no nothing. Its eyes, it was partway in the water is the thing. Its front legs were like slid down the bank and were in the water, and its eyes were all goopy, and it was just covered in mud, and just not looking very good.
Not looking healthy.
And also looking kind of scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You never
That's
know.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you never know what like a distressed animal is going to do, even if it is a household pet. So this whole thing was just getting weird. But it had a collar on, and so okay, this dog belongs to somebody. And with its front paws in the water, I thought for sure, like, okay, it's in a trap. And so I pulled the boat in, and I got out of the boat and thought, okay, is this dog like gonna come, snap at me or attack me or whatever? But so the best I could do, the best I had, short of like my musky net, was a boat towel. So and the dog hadn't moved at all. So I just like grabbed my boat towel and kind of, booped the dog a little bit just to see if it wanted to bite me or bite something. And it did not even move, like just kept looking right at me and just kind of shaking a little bit. So I thought, okay. And the water temp was 39 degrees. And this dog is halfway in the water. So it's like, all right, this is, I kind of inched my way closer a little bit. And this dog is distressed. We got a problem here. And I started feeling down its leg into the water to, see if it was stuck in a trap. It wasn't. It was really strange, because why would that dog choose to stay in this freezing cold water if it could get itself out? But anyway, I was able to lift its legs out of the muck and kind of push it up onto the grass because it couldn't move on its own. And I looked at the collar, and there were no tags on it, but there were a couple little like plaques, and discovered the dog's name was Bugsy, which
It's a great name for a dog.
fantastic name for a dog, and kind of disarming too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like this strange dog in the grass, like was named Shredder or something.
Or like Viper.
Yeah,
And you're like, oh,
whoa,
jeez.
okay. No, but this is just Bugsy.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Bugsy.
Exactly. Bugsy, you look like you're in rough shape. Let's get you out of here. So there were 2 phone numbers on Bugsy's collar, and I read them off to Steve, who was still in the boat, and he dialed them and didn't get answers on either, but left a message. And so I pull out my phone, and I'm on the phone to the Washburn County Sheriff's Department just to tell them what's going on out here, and could have called the National Park Service tip line, but it was almost 5 o'clock, and in November, 5 o'clock means dark up here.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be cold, and it's going to be just pretty hateful outside, and it's going to get dark fast. As I'm on the phone with the sheriff's deputy, Steve gets a call back from this number, and this woman said, "Yeah, Bugsy's our dog. We live about a mile down from here. There are no houses on the river, but they live just off on a side road, and we'll meet you back up at the landing. We'll come get them." And so Bugsy was not going to move under his own power, so I scooped up big old Bugsy, and he's all muddy and wet, and just the amount of dog hair that was in my boat after this was just obscene. But anyway.
Black lab, was it a black lab, right?
Black lab, yeah, on a white boat. Not that like the looks matter, but it just stood out so much. You could see all of it. It was,
And the smell too. Like labs, when they get
Oh,
wet, my uncle has labs too up in the North Woods, and I don't know why, but all of his labs always just smell so stinky.
they have a certain odor about
Smell.
it, for sure.
Yeah.
And Bugsy was no exception to that. So anyway, just dumped Bugsy in the boat and started rowing as hard as I could to get back up to the landing. And by now, this like kind of swirling, gusting wind had turned into just like a straight hammering wind at the back of the boat. So I'm Bugsy in the boat, and I'm just yanking on the oars to get all the way back up here. And water was really low, so I made it back within about 200 yards of the boat ramp, and then it got too shallow to row, so I had to get out and drag the boat.
And Steve is just sitting in the boat, or is he kind of like,
Steve's offering, to help if he can, but what is he going to do at that point? It's me slogging the boat back up to the ramp, and by this point, the other boat that was behind us has shown up, and they're taken out, and and the Bugsy's owners have pulled up, and so it's just this big meeting going on at the ramp here, and I'm sure the other boat was like, "What the hell is going on here?" But got Bugsy back up to the ramp and got him to his people. This all happened on a Friday. Turns out Bugsy had gone missing on Sunday night. Bugsy was out for 5 nights.
He had the itch to get out.
Well, apparently he had chased something. He took off, and I don't know if he was unable to find his way back or chose not to go back, but he'd been out for 5 nights, cold nights. I mean, it was getting down in the teens, and I'm sure he hadn't eaten anything, or at least anything good.
And then at the very end, his body just stiffened, and he just couldn't do anything anymore. He's like,
I have to
that's
imagine
as far as I could go.
Yeah, I mean, he might have like gone down to the river to try to get a drink of water and was just too weak to get himself out. I don't know. I can't guess how Bugsy got in the pickle that he was in, but I don't.
We can't talk to Bugsy about it.
No. It turns out we cannot talk to Bugsy about it. But there's the couple who were, Bugsy's owners were so grateful to see him, and I picked him up out of the boat because he still wasn't walking at this point. and got them in the car, and they thanked me and gave me a hug and took off. And I called them a couple weeks later just to check in on Bugsy. I didn't write their number down, but I'm normally not good at remembering phone numbers just in my head, but they had a super memorable phone number. And so I called him back to see, what's the Bugsy report? How's he doing? And no answer, but, a few days later, they called me back and they said that they had put Bugsy down.
What?
Well, Bugsy was 14 years old.
Oh, was it? It might have been his last swan song. Maybe that's what he was trying to do. It was just
It might have been
go on his own accord.
Bugsy's final hurrah. And who knows if Bugsy could see or how disoriented he was or whatever. But I take a little solace in a couple of things. One, that Bugsy didn't die cold, shaking, and alone on a riverbank in the dark. He was able to have a couple days of comfort at his home, with his people, and then they did what they had to do for Bugsy. But also, at age 14, Bugsy had fathered a litter of black lab puppies just that spring, and the couple has 2 of Bugsy's puppies. So the spirit of Bugsy lives on.
Oh, I love it. Where do you know? So do you get to see these puppies ever?
I've still got their phone number of this couple, and they gave me the unconditional right to just stop by the house anytime I'm down on that part of the river. So I think I would like to swing by and give those pups a good scratch behind the ears and see the Bugsy legacy.
That's what I love about fishing is just the fishing stories that come out of it. It's not normally always about fishing.
It was a really good thing. And also, that spot where we found Bugsy is a great musky spot. To this point, it had never been given a name. Now it's called Bugsy.
Oh, that is so cool. If people are wanting to learn a little bit more about you and Hayward Fly Fishing Company, what's the best way of them keeping in touch?
Well, seems the best way these days is probably on Instagram. Our Instagram, my Instagram, is Hayward Fly Fishing Co., all one word. And you can check us out there and see what's going on. The website, haywardflyfishingcompany.com, is a little dated. It's part of the transition to new ownership is kind of revamping that and getting some more updated information on there. But, stay tuned for that, kind of becoming a more reliable resource. But we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. So
and still taking some bookings?
Yeah. Yep. Schedule's filling up for 2022, but we've still got some openings. So happy to get out. People can give us a call.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stu, for sharing your stories. And like I said, I'm looking forward to this summer and making my way back up there and visiting you guys, because your shop is amazing, special, and you guys have a special place up there.
Yeah, we sure do. I'm glad you recognize that. And Wisconsin will always welcome you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just make sure I just get my story straight about Hayward sucks, I got to make sure I'm getting the right sucks and blows story straight.
Hayward does not blow. Spooner blows.
It just sucks. Spooner blows. Okay.
Right.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.